Hello and welcome back to the Parents at Work podcast, a podcast for parents who want to succeed at work while also raising children. My name is Mihalich-Levin, and we are back with our second in a series of episodes with parents in the consulting world. As a professional, I am a healthcare lawyer. I'm the founder of a program called Mindful Return that helps employers retain their new parent top talent. And I'm mama to two wonderful redheaded boys who are now ages 10 and 12. I'm joined today by my co-host and my amazing husband, Jason Levin. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you, Lori. You're a wonderful, amazing wife. And thank you for co-hosting with me. We are coming back from a week-long vacation in the Poconos where we actually got a chance to ski. So I'm grateful for that. A little bit about me. I'm the founder of Ready, Set, Launch LLC, where I'm a speaker, trainer, and coach. I advise executives on how to grow their professional services practice and make intentional career transitions. My debut book, Relationships to Infinity, The Art and Science of Keeping in Touch, is available on Amazon and wherever you find books online. Super excited about this segment that we're doing, Dads in Consulting, especially because I started my career in consulting. I'm an Anderson Consulting alum, now Accenture, and we have some Accenture links with both of our dads in consulting today.
Awesome. So if you haven't yet listened to the episode with the two moms in consulting who we interviewed, Liz Lapatina and Brooke Weddle, you'll want to do that. And to round out the conversation today, we've got two amazing dads, John Milde and Dan Baldor. Jason, you want to tell us about John?
My pleasure. Jonathan Milde is a managing director and partner at Boston Consulting Group, where he is a core member of the technology and digital advantage, transactions and integrations, and industrial goods practice areas. He also has significant experience with healthcare, consumer goods, and retail clients. Jonathan lives in Maryland and is married to Bess for 15 years. They have two kids, Beah, age 11, and August, age 8.
Awesome. We also have with us Dan Baldor, who's been with Accenture for nearly 18 years and is the office managing director for Accenture in Miami, as well as the life sciences client group lead on strategy and consulting products lead for Accenture's South Market unit. He's been married to his wife, Michelle, for 24 years and is dad to Carolina, who's 21, a senior at Parsons School of Design in Paris, France, and Stephanie, who's 19 and is studying psychology at Florida State University. Welcome, Dan, and welcome, John. We're so excited that you're both here.
Thank you. Yeah, great to be here.
So we are always interested in kicking off our conversations by having you tell us about your own personal working parent story. So rewind to when you were, brand new parents and walk us through that transition to working parenthood. John, if you wouldn't mind starting, we'll kick it off with you and then we'll turn it over to you, Dan.
Well, sure. Thank you. So, I did have two stints in consulting. One where I kind of started my professional career in the 2000s, and at that moment in time, I wasn't married and I didn't have children. But virtually my entire time at Boston Consulting Group, I've been a parent. So we have an introductory level there for kind of postgraduate student folks. We call it the consultant level. No surprise. And, it was at that stage that I had my first child. So really parenting has been a part of my consulting story. I mean, and certainly in the era of my professional career where I've considered consulting to be a profession, more so than a job. It's been with me a long time. And, my wife has always worked too. She's been working the entire time. It was an adjustment. I mean, I think you don't know what you don't know, like ahead of having children, you're just kind of excited for this new phase. But I will say that, a lot of the conversations that probably people are better at having now today, like care models, healthcare models, how you're going to, run your processes, while running two jobs. I mean, we weren't really having a lot of those conversations in that era. And it was something that we had to come to quickly once we had the children.
Thanks, John. Yeah, you don't know what you don't know. And gosh, there's so much you don't know in early parenthood. How about you, Dan? Can you tell us about your working parent story?
Sure. So back in 2001, Carolina was born. And at the time, I was an employee at Pfizer in New York City. And a lot of things have been happening in my life at that time. Not only the birth of my daughter, but my mother had just been diagnosed with cancer. 9/11 had happened. lot of things going on. And my wife and I decided we wanted to focus on bringing our child closer to her family. And so we decided to move back to South Florida from a promising career at Pfizer. But at that time, I started my own company coming back to Miami. And for about 3-4 years, I'd founded a medical device distribution company in South Florida. And my second child was born. And after a few years of doing that, sold it, spent some time on the sidelines thinking about what I wanted to do next, and decided to get into consulting. And now with 2 small children, my wife, who's a special education teacher, decided I wanted to give consulting a shot. And with that, I started my career at Accenture back in 2005, and it's been a wonderful ride. But one, I've always decided to put my family first, and that has never been in question, at least for myself, my family, and certainly my employer, and has been a blessing to this point.
Thank you for leading us on your journey there, Dan. Let's stick with you for a minute. How would you describe, if you can generalize at all, what it's like to be a parent in management consulting these days?
Key comment there around these days. I think management consulting prior to the pandemic was a bit different from these days, I would say. I think my career at Accenture was largely built on traveling to the client site weekly, Sunday evening flights, Monday morning flights, Thursday evening flights, or Friday evening flights. So it was a significant chunk of time away from my family to be able to advance a career in consulting. I think these days it's different. I think with the advent of using these collaborative tools and clients that are seeing the value of bringing together the kind of consulting that they require, but not all of it has to be in person, I think is a little bit different these days. And I can certainly say I'm thankful for it. I think I can still do a phenomenal job for my clients, but still be a great dad while doing a lot of that from home.
Yeah, we definitely heard the same themes from Liz and Brooke on the mom side. Do you think, before we go over to you, Dan, do you think that this change in the travel pace will maybe, influence or affect new parents' transitions into parenthood and maybe people's decisions about children earlier in their careers?
I think the advent of coming and doing jobs from work that we do as consultants for our clients, both in person and remote, but that balance being a bit more balanced, quite frankly, is better for fathers. I think it's better for mothers, and it allows really great talent to not have to choose anymore, to be able to actually do both very well and still meet the demands of the job.
Silver lining of the pandemic, for sure. John, over to you. How would you describe what it's like to be a parent in management consulting today?
Well, I wouldn't have too many builds on what Dan said. It's been a very radical change. I mean, from the full week travel, 4-day week travel to really more like fractional trips, kind of in and out, even less expectation from clients that you be around, welcoming of those collaboration tools. I do think it has improved the day-to-day experience of consulting. But that said, I wouldn't say that the hours, given to consulting are that different. They're different kinds of hours. Those hours spent in transition, like in traveling and running from meeting to meeting and grabbing some food, that has gone down. But, the time spent, with the laptop, on calls, I think a lot of that has stayed the same. And as a result, I think it still requires a pretty thoughtful approach to priorities, and an awareness of time. I am in an office. I'm in my home office today, but, I do need to come out of that office, in order to engage on the events that are happening, downstairs and at my kids' school. I do think that some of that same thoughtfulness that, I tried to have in the era when I was traveling has carried over into the present era.
And it's interesting. Jason's at home working from home today. I'm sure he's at his clients all the time. The client side today. And I stepped away from a group meeting that we're having to have this conversation. So it can be done.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've been given a lot more flexibility and freedom, and we still need to use our time intentionally and prioritize and set the boundaries that allow us to spend time with our families too. Over to you, Jason, for our next question.
I love the conversation, and this is something that showed up in the Moms in Consulting segment, was also around priorities, where people's priorities, both in family and work, were even clearer to them. and that they actually were able to be more effective in both ways. So I want to stick with John for a second. What workplace supports did you find particularly helpful as you became a working parent?
I guess I would say a lot has really progressed in the era since I had my daughter, 11 years ago. And I think parenting just as a theme has entered the workforce with capital letters and has really improved for, people becoming parents today. But I would still hand out a lot of compliments to our working environment. My case team knew I was having a child. They were very supportive of it. They gave me a lot of flexibility around when to roll off the effort. The staffers, were very aware. They wanted me to have a good experience. They wanted me not to be stressed with work and go, enjoy a milestone moment. There was a really warm people aspect to that. And I don't take it for granted that we had just great healthcare and, the overall doctor experience of both children that, was provided through the employer was fantastic, and, super grateful that we had, the births that we had.
That's great. That's really great. And the fact that you had supportive colleagues throughout the entire transition, that's just so important, because none of this happens in isolation. The fact that you have supportive colleagues is critical. Good for you, John. That's really great. So, Dan, same question. What workplace supports did you find particularly helpful as you became a working parent?
Well, a few things. So when I was a parent or became a parent back in the early 2000s, and it doesn't seem that long ago, but some of the benefits that we have in place today for Accenture didn't exist. I'm thankful that the company has made huge strides to make being a parent and a consultant at Accenture easier, more fulfilling. That's number one. Accenture really offers a range of benefits today, really, that parents can take advantage of. In addition to paid parental leave for the birth or adoption of a child, we have flexible schedules and employee resource groups for parents to talk through parenting issues with other parents. And Accenture offers also backup childcare as well, access to tutoring for children that require it, or other learning services, just to name a few. So I'm really thankful for the things that we've asked for as employees over the years, and Accenture has stepped up. We've been recognized as the best place to work for several years in a row, a top 10 best company with Seramount and other organizations. And so these things have been recognized now externally, and which I'm thankful for. But me in particular, I'm most grateful for the things that we've done within our culture at Accenture, because we've, through the leadership of our CHRO, Ellen Shook, we've instituted something called being truly human at the workplace. And that means a lot of things, from mind and body and soul, quite frankly, around the things that we need to make sure that we're bringing the very best of ourselves to our workplace, our clients. But it's in our interactions with our colleagues where others recognize sometimes the need for additional help or time, et cetera. And we act in the best ways for our colleagues. And being truly human is not something we just talk about. At Accenture, it's something that we live in. I'm very thankful for that.
It's great that we can actually talk about humanity in the workplace. It feels more livable, which is that's pretty special. You were talking about backup childcare. I know that that's a benefit that Lori had when she was at a large law firm, and that's something that we used, which was huge because having backup childcare. When the kids are young, you never know who's going to get some kind of ailment where you have to run to the pediatrician or something.
Yeah, it saved us any number of times. I want to add two things. One is, to the extent you, listener, work for an organization and you're not sure if they provide backup childcare, ask. It took me a number of months at the law firm where I was working until I discovered the benefit of backup childcare. So if you're listening to this and you're an employer, I'd say, do as much outreach as you can to make sure that your employees know about these amazing benefits. The other thing I just wanted to put a quick plug in for is, Dan, you mentioned having ERGs, employee resource groups, to support employees. And I convene a group of about 260 leaders of working parent and caregiver ERGs. It's called the Working Parent Group Network. And I just invite anybody who's listening to this to feel free to join us. We have a Zoom call every other month. And really, it's about how do we run our groups? I'm a serial founder of two of these working parent groups, and I know how it can feel to recreate the wheel all the time. So if you want to participate in these conversations and just this learning collaborative, feel free to go to mindfulreturn.com/WPGN. That stands for Working Parent Group Network. So feel free to join in that conversation. And thank you for sharing all of that, Dan.
So as a coach, speaker, trainer, I love what your first job can mean to you and how it influences your own development and how you think about things. So Dan, I want to stick with you for a second. What was your first job? What'd you learn from it?
Oh, my first job. I worked at a record store.
A record store. Wow.
Yeah. I know I'm dating myself to a little bit, but they're coming back in style. So maybe some listeners are going to see that. I worked at a record store, and what I learned from that was, number one, independence. I learned the value of money, quite frankly, the ability to be proud of doing work and then being compensated for it, and then spending the money that I made on the things that were important to me at the time. I also worked with young mothers at the time at the record store, and so saw some of that as well, and how they made ends meet. So a lot of it was just seeing the world as it is.
Wow. And so was your job at the record store to do sales, or what kinds of jobs were you doing within the record store?
Yeah, cashier, and also, just helping customers just find the music that they're looking to buy. So, yeah.
That's awesome. A record store. I love it.
Wait, but before we move on to John, favorite album from the time you were at
Yeah, it's a good question.
This is going to sound weird. Bryan Adams' Reckless album. I really like that album a lot.
Oh, nice.
Awesome.
I like Bryan Adams. That's good. I'm going to have to pull that up this week. So thanks, Dan. All right. So John, first job, what'd you learn from it?
Yeah, I was trying to make sure I had my years in order, but I actually think the first job was in the summers. In Missouri, fireworks are legal and a very exciting part of the lead up to the 4th of July season. So I remember working in fireworks stands and that, and manning these stands for mostly kids to come in during the day and buy bottle rockets and and firecrackers. And then as the 4th approached, of course, it was like a crush of people, wanting to buy the fountains and Roman candles and everything else. But look, I mean, that was like hot work in the Missouri sun, and just I learned what hard work can look like, and to some extent, how to persevere through some really boring, low moments too. It's not the most intellectually stimulating work, but I think, as Dan said, putting in time into something, can make you feel proud, and certainly the output of getting paid and spending money in the ways that make you happy it's a great lesson.
That's awesome. Do you remember what you spent your first payment on?
Yeah, I mean, probably some synthetic shirt, maybe like a hypercolor t-shirt at the time or something like that, or cool. Music too. Absolutely. I wasn't working in a record store, but loved buying CDs in that era.
What were you listening to at the time?
Everything from, LL Cool J, Walking with a Panther, to Poison, so there's a lot of ground covered there.
That's awesome. Good work, John. We clearly learned a lot.
Love it. From listening to music to blowing things up. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So clearly your jobs have provided you with life skills. And Jason and I are also very much of the mindset that the skills that parenthood brings us are also directly applicable to our day jobs.
This episode of the Parents at Work podcast is brought to you by Ready, Set, Launch, a boutique career coaching firm that supports executives in career and retirement transitions, as well as building their professional services practices. I'm Jason Levin, and I've been supporting executives achieving their goals in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors for the past 10 years. Based on those experiences, I decided to write a book called Relationships to Infinity: The Art and Science of Keeping in Touch. We say keep in touch, but we struggle to do so. I wrote this book so that my readers could have proven research-based tactics to keep in touch and reap all the benefits. I'm excited about this book, and I know that you will too. Head over to ReadySetLaunch.net or connect with me on LinkedIn to learn more about the book. Be happy to learn more about your goals and your organization and how there might be a fit. Again, head over to readysetlaunch.net to get back in touch. Now, back to our episode.
And so I'm curious, we'll stick with you for a minute, John. What skills do you think that you personally have gained through parenthood that are helpful to your consulting role?
Oh, wow. I think the one that comes to mind is how much really humor can move kids along in the direction that you want. Sometimes you want a very serious, outcome, like you want them to wear shoes outside, but, kind of making it light, playful, and, a little bit fun can get kids to the end result faster. And honestly, it's not just kids. I think, that's a great technique to use with your teams, with your clients, getting to a place where you have that sort of informal comfort and can kind of nudge the conversation along through, levity and, a bit of playfulness, I think is a great managerial and advisor instinct or toolkit to have. That'd be one I would call out. I'm sure there's many, but I might highlight that one.
That's a great one. It reminds me of the spoonful of sugar concept. Yes. Dan, over to you. What sort of skills do you think that you've gained through parenthood that are also really useful in your consulting role?
Well, they say young children are the best negotiators in the world. And therefore, I think living and with my young children helped me prepare for the kind of interactions I might have with clients at the time. That helped me quite a bit in terms of just, making sure that everything's grounded, that we're, honestly, to speak simply and to the point, to make sure that if things are well understood, there's no room for doubt or on being unclear, and really listening in some cases. Children have a lot to say, and at work the same thing is true for our clients. And for a child and working and growing with children and teenagers and so forth, a lot of change going on in their lives. And so the same is true for our clients, right? Our job is to bring forward change. And so again, being a parent helps prepare for some of that stuff. And I've found it to be useful.
That's a great list of skills. And yes, kids are relentless negotiators. They've no end in sight in terms of when they give up.
And especially when it comes to asking for dessert for the first time.
Yes. We had an ongoing ice cream negotiation last night that resulted in going to bed without the ice cream. But, another day, I'm sure we'll have the same conversation. You've sort of anticipated my next question too, Dan, so I'm going to stick with you, which is, what sort of changes do you see happening in management consulting that are affecting working parents, even if they're not exactly about working parents?
Changes that are happening in management consulting. I would say the pace at which things are changing in the business world that require the skills of folks like John and myself to help them get there, it's speeding up. Technology is changing the game. It's making things in some cases simpler, but in other ways a little more complicated. And so for, working mothers and fathers, that could be really scary, right? To have to deal with all of this at the same time while raising a family. And what I would give in terms of advice would be, don't get sucked up into the chaos. Mute the noise. Focus on the things that are important to you personally, and of course your clients, because that's what we do. But try to give the Heisman to everything else. It's easy to say, hard to do. But if you're able to hone that skill, and it takes time, you'll be much happier and much more fulfilled for it.
Dan, is there anything, practically speaking, that you do to mute that noise?
For me, for some people, it's meditation. For me, it's my faith. It's just a constant grounding of what's important in life. Those are the things I think that matter to me most. But for everyone, it could be different.
Beautiful. Yeah, the constant grounding. I love that phrase. And just every day reminding ourselves of what's important. John, over to you. What changes do you see happening in management consulting that happen to be affecting working parents?
Well, I think I would just extend some of Dan's comments. I think for the most part, if you look back over the past decade, a couple of decades, consulting has been a growing profession, which means there are more people moving into the profession. It means that companies are all expanding their capabilities, and bumping into each other more. So I would say it's a more, competitive landscape, year over year. And I do think that has, the effect of, creating more demand on your time, creating more stress, for all consultants. And for parents, I think it just requires, like you said, that constant awareness of your priorities and how to get those needs served.
Is there anything that you personally do to mitigate that stress that can compound daily?
I try to create some walls. I really do try to invest in, time in the weekend, and I'm not always successful at that, but I certainly have a goal of, clearing out the weekend to spend time with my family. I wear a fitness band, to just try to stay more on top of my own personal, health, my personal metrics, my biometrics, and, try to be a healthy individual, because I think the physical is necessary to be present, emotionally and mentally for my family.
Hear, hear. Yes, the physical and mental wellness are so linked to one another for sure. Back over to you, Jason, for our final set of questions.
Yeah. And before I hit on the final set of questions, I really enjoyed how, Dan, you were talking about the changes in technology and how you really need to be there for your clients. John, you were acknowledging this creates a great deal of stress. I mean, the whole notion of being in management and consulting is that you're advising, these industry leaders on what they need to be doing next. And so I love how, Dan, you found faith to help ground yourself. John, you've got your fitness tracker and your weekends and your intentions. I think each person can find their own voice in how they think about centering, which is really, really important. So, John, I want to stay with you for a second. And this is kind of the lightning round. So it's going to be 3 questions in one. Number 1, best piece of advice for navigating life as a working parent. Number 1 book, and number 1 piece of technology.
Wow. I mean, I think the advice is you really have to consider how you want to spend your time in valuable, emotionally satisfying ways. And so outsourcing the parts of life that you don't feel that strongly about is very important. And it can seem a bit awkward. I mean, I remember, my dad always washed the car, and he always mowed the lawn. And my mom was always picking me up from school. There were these things that I just see as very, typical. But I also think that that's not necessarily the way that I want to spend large chunks of the weekend, so thinking about how time is spent and outsourcing is definitely a big piece of that. I don't know if I have a number 1 book that would stand out for me, but I would say for technology, a type of common calendar for the family. I know Lori and Jason, you're very big on this, but I'm a big supporter of that as well. Having a common view of family commitments that actually syncs in with my work calendar has been a really critical and valuable and simple, piece of technology, right? There's almost no investment required there to achieve that.
No, but what you're talking about is, Lori and I were just doing it last night, coordinating calendars.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much time you spend coordinating your calendar with your spouse, both not only for work, but all the different kids' activities and those types of things. And I think it's interesting how you think of outsourcing, which, when we were growing up, that wasn't even, it was barely even a word. You outsource mowing the lawn? What are you kidding? I think that's something that, we all can consider, should consider. So we're using our time to best that we can. Those are some really great comments. Dan, on to you. Same questions.
Advice, I would say, focus on what's important in your life, determine what those things are and focus on those things, and everything else will fall into place. In terms of books, I'm actually going to recommend 2. There's a book called Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck, as well as another one called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Both are excellent reads. I believe both are New York Times bestsellers, but both can help in terms of how to kind of think about and change the way people think about their work, their life, et cetera, and just expand. And then in terms of best piece of technology, I'm so connected to my mobile phone. I don't think I can do without it, unfortunately. And I think a lot of your listeners might have the same problem I do, which is it's right next to my bedside. And it's the first thing I see in the morning, which is kind of weird. It's bad. It's an admission I hate to make, but it's true. it's important. And I need to do a better job personally of making sure that I use it properly, not overuse that piece of technology, because it could be something that takes over your life.
I hear you, Dan. That's actually one of my 2023 intentions. And it actually came from my kids that, Daddy, you're on your phone too much. Of course, our children are our teachers. And I love the books that you'd recommended. Mindset is a favorite of mine. So, and I think it really sets an important intention for, how you focus on things. Those are some really great ideas.
Yes. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, John. I just recently learned the trick of putting your phone on grayscale to make it look boring, which has dramatically reduced my interest in picking up my phone. So I'd encourage everybody to give it a try. Just Google, turn your phone on grayscale. It's sort of startling at first how dull the phone can look. But when it's duller, it's less enticing. So just throwing that out there. John and Dan, thank you so much for being on with us today. Jason and I have really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm certain that our listeners have been able to find themselves and hear their own working parent experiences in your words and will draw inspiration from your wisdom. So thank you. If you enjoyed this podcast, or if you know a working parent who you think would find this conversation helpful, we would be so grateful if you would, first of all, subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss an episode, and also share the link to this particular episode, perhaps with someone who is a consultant and is a working parent. Thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to being together again next time, and all the best in your working parent endeavors. You got this.